you for joining us.
There you go. Now say hello.
Hello! Thank you for joining us. You're at the inaugural kickoff of our new podcast, Two Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, those girls are stigmatizing mental illness. Why would they use a movie like that? Well, we don't really care what you think. I'm just kidding. I'm joking.
I don't care. We think it's funny.
Who are you?
Oh gosh. I'm Kat Atwell. Hi. And excited to be here.
And I'm Chrissie Hodges. We're both mental health advocates here in the Denver area, and we're doing everything we can to reduce stigma of mental illness. And when we got together and thought about this podcast, we thought, what is the first thing people think about when they think about mental illness?
And we decided clearly it was Jack Nicholson.
The first thing people think about when they think about mental illness is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And so I probably had a drink or two, and I was like, maybe we should just do Two Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And we both went,
yeah, this is happening.
Oh my gosh, that's exactly what we're doing. So we're here to help destigmatize mental illness, not perpetuate it, and we hope you enjoy all that we have to offer. Kat?
I was just going to mention that what's important here is to recognize that we're trying to do this with a sense of humor as well, because oftentimes I think the message gets lost because we are so serious all the time. So this is supposed to be enjoyable for everybody and educational.
Excellent. So we are going to pull this a little closer because I'm worried about the sound.
Oh, all right. Our connection is weak.
Uh-oh, our connection is weak. Well, if we lose you, we'll come right back on because you know where we are? We're at the Lincoln Station Bar, otherwise known as the Funky Buddha, downtown Denver. If you want to come on down and join us, are you going to be playing us set?
Lincoln. I'll be DJing.
Oh, and our guest, our live guest here who we're about to interview is going to be DJing a little bit later. Woo! Give me some techno!
Very excited. Yes, 8th and Lincoln in downtown Denver. And it is a glorious day, and we get to sit outside and talk about stuff.
So let's get on it, and let's start talking about some stuff.
Yep.
Kat is going to scoot over this way, and then we're going to have Chris Lawrence scoot on in here to talk to us today.
AKA DJ Chris Epic.
Come on in, Chris!
Hey, everybody.
Chris Lawrence is also known as DJ Epic here in the Denver area.
Chris Epic, that's correct.
Oh, Chris Epic. And if you're hearing the sounds of the traffic flying by, it's because we're right in the heart of Denver trying to celebrate mental health awareness. Woo! To kick that off, we're going to have Chris introduce himself. Who are you?
Well, my name's Chris. I am a mental health and substance use professional. I'm an addictions counselor, and I've been in the field for about 2 years. I work at Mind Springs Health, the largest community mental health center in western Colorado. There's 26 centers, and I work in the largest one in Grand Junction. And I started off in detox and worked my way up as a case manager. I do groups, and I just recently got my certification level 2 for addiction counselor. Also a master's student in a mental health program for counseling.
Excellent. We need more people like you.
Yeah.
Get up close.
I
Show
just want
them
to
who
see
you're
the
at.
light. There's the light. Hey, everybody.
Show them who you are.
Woohoo!
All right, Chris. I know Chris and I are very close right now. I just want you to know. And so, but this is what we want to do. We want to get close with people who are living in recovery with mental illness. We want to bring their stories to you. And today we're going to talk about Chris's story.
That's right.
So Chris is going to share with us a little bit about his journey with the substance use disorder and how he is living now in recovery and all the wonderful things that he is doing to change the way people view substance use. Chris, you want to tell us some story?
Sure. So I came from a few generations of addiction, alcohol, and substance abuse, and my father was a heavy drinker and drug user, and our family fell apart as a result of that when I was 10, and that was like probably the worst thing that happened to me in my childhood was the separation of my parents and the divorce. And then you know, I started actually right after that smoking cigarettes and smoking pot at around 12. The light's kind of bad, though.
There we go.
There's the
Yeah.
light. And, high-risk behaviors, and, I struggled with attention deficit disorder and trauma. And both my parents are survivors of sexual trauma as children, which also has a developmental effect when, two people with dealing with those problems are raising kids. So I had a lot of struggles, and, I was pretty successful in high school. I was involved in extracurricular activities like speech and debate and theater. But once I got out on my own and moved away out of town, I started experimenting with pretty hard drugs, methamphetamine, ecstasy, club drugs. I got into the rave scene in '99, became a DJ in 2000, and it was just a nonstop party for me for several years. But I got involved in the criminal justice system from DUIs and other arrests, and there were a few short stints of sobriety that I tried, but I kept relapsing, and I got into a pretty chronic state of alcohol use where I couldn't go a day without drinking without going into withdrawal. So I was actually physically dependent on alcohol. In 2012, I experienced the relapse of my dad. He was sober for about 18 years, became a very successful real estate developer in western Colorado. And when the real estate market crashed in 2008, a couple years later, he relapsed, and his drug of choice was crack. And when I discovered that kind of brought me right back into when I was 10 years old and our family fell apart. All those resentments, all that pain, on top of me being at the peak of my substance use. And so the best way that a codependent knew how to cope in a situation like that is I started using drugs with my father. And, in about 2011, I was watching an intervention TV show, and I noticed that,
Look at all those hearts.
oh, look at all those hearts. That's awesome. I was watching an intervention TV show, and I noticed that the subject of the show got help with the intervention, but also the family members that were struggling with substance use were able to get treatment too. So I thought just maybe the show would think my dad's story was amazing enough that they'd come out and do the show, and I'd get to go to rehab too. And sure enough, I contacted the show, and they contacted me right away the next day. And they did the show, and I got to go to treatment, and I've been sober since April 8th, 2012.
Woo!
Yes. When I got back into town, I finished my bachelor's in business. I was a manager at a restaurant, and like 18 months into sobriety, I was miserable, and I wanted to do something more meaningful, so I got into the mental health field. I wanted to become an addictions counselor. That was about 2.5 years ago, and just a month ago, I received my Level 2 certification addiction counselor certification.
Yes!
I'm officially an addictions counselor. And my passion in the field is working with people that, of course, struggle with addiction, who have been wrapped up in the criminal justice system, and who have also struggled with trauma. I think those three elements are, intertwined. And I guess my thesis on, addiction and its root is that it's not just a drug problem; it's a relationship problem. As a matter of fact, I believe that too with mental health problems. That I think human beings are starved for deep, authentic human connection, and oftentimes we see that that's fragmented or broken when we have debilitating mental illness or substance use. Oftentimes I tell people that drugs are a cheap substitute for that human connection that we crave, and we're chasing that and developing a relationship with that instead of with others. And when you come to a point of change, you're met at this, right at the foot of vulnerability. And for a lot of people, that's the tipping off point, where you either run back into your addiction to escape, or you dive head on into that fear of the unknown and vulnerability. And I don't think that that's necessarily possible without the support of an awesome group of people. And that's what it was for me. Is I was absolutely completely hopeless, and I knew that I discovered that I didn't have to do this alone, that I didn't have to get sober on my own and rebuild my life on my own, but that there were caring people around me that would support me. That was the paradigm shift for me that gave me hope. And that's the hope that I want to carry with my profession to other people. That we can fill those cracks of the brokenness in our society with hope. That people, knowing that people can and do recover from addiction and mental health problems. And that's why I'm so stoked about being a part of the cause.
I don't know if you already love him, but we do. We need people like Chris in the field of addiction and helping people with substance use disorders, because there is just not enough people out there that really get it, that really understand it, and that really want to provide that hope. I mean, don't you think, Chris, that so many people think, oh, they just need to stop. If they would just stop tomorrow, things would be better, and that people with substance use disorders are selfish. What do you think about that?
Right. So I understand that that everyone has choice and everyone's autonomous, but what I tell people is that it's not that the choice to change is impossible. It's that it's so hard and the pain of change is so difficult that your brain tricks you into thinking that it's impossible. And so you go off those base instincts in your mind. Addiction is at the very core of our instinctual brain. There's a point where your brain kind of takes over from the rational part of your brain and says, we need to do this drug because the chemicals are telling my brain that this is how I get to survive. And that's where the water gets muddied with choice. And the other thing too is that it's all about the language that we use. I know people that, they just reduce people with substance use problems and mental health problems to their diagnosis or their drug of choice. They're tweakers or they're crackheads or they're junkies. But, we're all people and we all have problems and struggles, and we're so much more than our addiction. We're so much more than our disease. And I think when we're able to discover compassion and humanize addiction and humanize it along with a whole slew of other problems that we have in our society, then I think people would be more open to be able to have a dialogue about addiction and to be able to show people who are struggling with addiction that they're worth it. And that's what I think.
Excellent. One final question. Typically, I'll ask something along the lines of what can someone do if they are asking for or if they need help with addiction. But I think this is a really important question, Chris. What can loved ones do for someone who's struggling with addiction? What can they do for that person to help them know that they're cared for and help them know they really want the best for them?
It's so complex, but really, there's people that either completely sever ties with their loved ones because they've reached their limit and waiting for their loved ones to hit bottom, and there's others that don't want their loved ones to hit bottom because it could be, honestly, somebody's bottom could be death, could be as worse as death. But it's really just discovering what it means to have unconditional love while still holding your loved ones accountable, and really showing them that there is support and there's love, and not personalizing a person's addiction. I have a tendency to personalize stuff all the time, and I know that by personalizing it, taking ownership, thinking that their addiction or your loved one's inability to quit using is because of you, or because it was something that you didn't do, or it's because of something that you did do. At the end of the day, people with substance use problems have to take ownership of their addiction problems, and loved ones have to take ownership of their side of the street. But people's addictions, it's really tough because people are dying all the time and you don't want to see your loved ones die, but sometimes you just need to have healthy boundaries, and there are resources in the community. There's NAMI is an amazing organization to help loved ones that have family members struggling with mental health problems and addiction. And you can always contact your local community mental health center to get ideas. And even if it's a matter of pulling together a strong support system to get your loved one in a room and let them know that, you know, they see that they're in pain and struggling, and that you're there to help and get them the help that they need.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Any shameless promotion for your DJ career?
You know, I love that I can still DJ after all these years and not worry about craving a drug or a drink. I used to quit DJing when I tried to quit drinking and drugging, and it was just easier for me to kind of blame it on that. But today I go out and I enjoy, you know, having a great time with my friends, drinking club sodas and rocking out to electronic music. So I play out in Denver every once in a while, and you know, would love to see some of you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for all that you do. We're so excited to have you on. If you want to find out more about Chris, is there anywhere that they can find you? Do you have a website? Do you have a
Facebook?
You know, you can add me on Facebook. It's facebook.com/DJ Chris Epic.
There you go.
Yeah, that's an easy one. And also, you can find the full episode of the intervention show that me and my father were on, but you have to, it's kind of hidden. This is the title that you have to Google for YouTube. It's, you type in crack addiction and bath salts. And there's definitely going to be more to be revealed about that, but look that up and you can see the whole episode.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Chris.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
We hope to have you back on the show at some point.
I think you will.
All right.
That'd be great.
Come on in, Kat. Woo! That was awesome. All right, so here we are, a little tight fit here.
Very cozy.
Oh, there we go. Look at the light. Yes. Well, that was awesome being able to hear so much about addiction and substance use disorders. We don't often hear about that, so we're definitely going to have Chris come back on the show at some point to give us some of his top-notch knowledge.
It was really useful for me too. I'm looking at him and I shouldn't be.
He's right here, by the way. So
it's okay. It's all right, everybody.
It's useful for me because I actually lost one of my best friends to substance abuse and depression. So finding out how you can help people without getting too involved, that's something that I have a tendency to do because the whole fixer mentality, some people call it codependency. But, you know, and finding out about community resources too, I think is really important. So I'm really grateful that Chris was able to come on here.
Alrighty, well now let's get right to it. Kat and I are going to talk a little bit about who we are and why you should watch this show and follow us and what you can do to support us and what is the inspiration behind the show. So Kat, why don't you take it away?
Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about my own experience living with mental illness. I was first diagnosed with anxiety and depression about 20 years ago, and I didn't really take it all that seriously, I guess, because I sort of figured, well, everybody has anxiety and depression to some level. I didn't really invest a whole lot of effort into therapy, although I went, but I wasn't, you know, I was hearing, I wasn't listening. You know what I mean. I wasn't absorbing the information and tools.
She was hearing but not listening.
Right. What?
I'm just making that.
See
I
what
really
I
don't
did?
know.
Anyway, so it wasn't until 2006 that I had moved out here from Kansas City to Denver, and I had taken a new job, and the stress that came with that new job and some bad experiences in the workplace put me into a very, very depressive state. And up until I got married, I was really good at hiding my symptoms of mental illness because I'm really outgoing. I love to do comedy and I'm very extroverted. So I wore that mask whenever I was outside. But when I was on my own, I would isolate. I'd have trouble eating. I wouldn't clean, and I would obsess. My inner critic and my self-stigma was and continues to be my biggest challenge. Once I was married, though, my ability to hide my symptoms became really difficult because my husband was there all the time. And I wound up hospitalized in, I think, March or April of 2006. So about 10 and a half years ago, which is really insane. And at that time, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, a generalized anxiety disorder, and panic disorder. I went on disability for about 6 months and sort of had to start from the ground up and actually take my mental illness seriously, accept it as part of who I am, part of my fabric, without indicting myself for being some kind of failure of a human being. You know,
I
and
know that.
right? And so Chrissie is agreeing right now.
I know that.
And so I had to sort of build myself from the ground up at that point in time. Actually, this is great. So one of the reasons that I got very active in advocacy was because one of the tools that kept coming up with doctors was you need to exercise more. You need to exercise more. That's going to help you with your serotonin, or I don't know, with a chemical that'll make you happier. And
Oh yeah, just go for a run. Everything will be better.
that'll make it all better for you.
Couch.
But it's valid when you don't move, especially as someone in living with anxiety or in the midst of a panic attack. You have a tendency to go into prey mode. And what I mean by that is, if you picture like the Serengeti, and there's an animal, I don't know, some sort of deer or ibis. I think that's what they're little hoppy antelope things. What? And there's a predator. Let's say that there's a lion coming at him. The antelope freezing. Right.
P-R-E-Y. I was like prey?
Not prey. Not
Please
prey.
help me, Mo.
Like, I'm a tiny animal and I'm about to die. You're right. So you freeze. You don't move your eyes around, and oftentimes that freezing point would lead me into a depressive state. So, but I hate exercise, and I'm going to be honest, also a challenge that continues. So I'm like, okay, well, how can I exercise while helping somebody else? And so I started doing fundraising walks. I did the NAMI walk, National Alliance on Mental Illness, and that got me more involved in NAMI, and I found out that I really liked educating people and connecting with other people with lived experience with mental illness. And I became an In Our Own Voice speaker with them. And really over the past few years, stuff has just shot up. And the more people that I meet that are involved with helping break down stigma and hearing other people's stories to break down my own self-stigma is amazing. And yeah, I still do this, and I'm still the antelope on the Serengeti from time to time. Yeah, I met people like Chrissie. I mean, come on. And a lot of folks around the Denver community, and yeah, it's just been phenomenal. And I'm really hoping that our show here, Two Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, if you missed our intro, continues to bring up topics that oftentimes are overlooked or that we've heard about, but not particularly in the way that we're going to be discussing together and with the guests that we bring on.
Yes.
So I'm so grateful that you guys are here watching us. This is really momentous for us, and I'm super excited. So I'm going to let Chrissie tell you her story now.
And just to add to that, one of the things we want to do with the show is not just do the regular topics and the regular things that most people know about mental illness. Let's talk to someone that has OCD like myself, and we want to go a lot deeper than that. We want to hit the topics that people really, really are struggling with when it comes to stigma, the things that nobody talks about, because that's really what pushes you into recovery, is knowing that you aren't the only one that feels tremendous shame about having a mental illness, and knowing that you aren't the only one that thinks, well, I haven't been hospitalized, or I didn't commit suicide, so maybe my mental illness isn't as bad. These topics that don't really get brought to the surface all the time, but that just plague us.
You made me think of one. So I also have a blog about just last week was, I'm feeling really happy. This is great. Unless I'm only happy because I'm on medication right now.
I know.
If it's a happy based on medication, does it count? How will I know if it's me being happy or chemicals making me happy? Holy crap, what if I get too happy and go into a manic episode?
What if I'm never really happy?
Right.
Ever?
Is this a fake happy? Do I recognize my own feelings anymore? So topics like that. Back to Chrissie.
things that you and I and everybody else that suffers with mental health challenges, those things that we deal with all the time and we think we're so alone in. Let me tell you something. We ain't all alone.
No.
Nope. All right, so let me quickly tell you about me. For most of you who've been following the show for a long time, you're like, oh, here we go again. We got to hear Chrissie's story. So I'll make it brief for you. My name's Chrissie Hodges. I'm a mental health advocate here in Denver, and I typically talk about OCD and pure OCD and suicide prevention and stigma. Stigma is my big thing. Why? Because I spent 14 years buried underneath my own personal stigma. Just briefly, symptoms of my illness started when I was 8 years old. My biggest fear ever was worried I was going to throw up. Yes, I still have it. So, just so you know, I have not gotten ERP for that one. Probably not going to, because I don't want to have to put vegetable soup in my mouth and spit it in the toilet. Anyway, so as I got into my teenage years, my obsessions became really dark and ugly and scary and violent and sexual and everything else. Sexual obsessions, you may think, wow, that seems like a lot of fun. No. Not these sexual obsessions. And so anyway, I lived in silence for 12 years until I couldn't anymore. I didn't even know I had an illness. And my only solution was suicide. Typically what I tell people when I say that is, I don't want you to misunderstand this. I did not want to die. I wanted to live, but I didn't think I deserved to live. I didn't think I was worthy of a life. I didn't think there was help for me. I didn't think that I was someone that could ever deserve some sort of, functional life and happiness. So that's why suicide was the only option for me. Plus, when you lose all hope and you're numb, you can't do that much more, right? So anyway, I survived. Oh, thank goodness. And then I went into treatment, but then that began the journey, the 14-year journey of feeling worthless, feeling completely alone. I didn't want to tell anybody about what I'd been through. I was so terrified that they would judge me. And then finally in 2011, I was like, screw this. I'm tired of feeling guilty. I'm tired of feeling angry. And that's when I started speaking out. And I started speaking about my type of OCD, which is typically called pure O, P-U-R-E-O, intrusive thoughts. Also, taboo obsessions, negative intrusive thoughts, all kinds of. But OCD is a very, very debilitating and paralyzing disorder. But it's interesting a lot of times, and this is a topic I'd like to broach sometimes. It's interesting, people will be like, well, OCD isn't a major mental illness. That just makes us feel really stupid. Did you want to say something?
No, I will say this. Up until when I met Chrissie and some other peer advocates, I have one eye. I didn't know much about OCD either. And so it's really been a steep learning curve for me. And I've read a couple memoirs about it. And, hearing that someone has sexual obsessions and then reading specifically about what that entails just terrifies me and breaks my heart for people on the inside. I can't imagine overcoming and having to fight that kind of fight on a regular basis. So we need to give you serious credit for the work that you do.
I'll take that credit.
Yeah, she should. She's very humble. And for the others that speak up, because I didn't even know there were varying levels of OCD until I met Chrissie. And I totally bought into a lot of the memes online and that kind of thing without taking into account that these are impacting people, minimalizing their experience and their pain. So, yeah.
Don't be taking them Facebook OCD quizzes.
No.
Don't you do it.
I learned the hard way. Side. It's bad.
Anyway, my hope for this show, and I was just kidding at the beginning when I was like, we don't care. We do. Yes. The thing is that we wanted to bring awareness to the language that people use, the real stigma and the real way people think about mental illness, which sadly is one flew over the cuckoo's nest. That is what people think about. They have that image of Jack Nicholson with the lobotomy things on his head, and Nurse Ratched. Well, let me tell you, there's still some Nurse Ratcheds out there. But anyway, probably one final thing that we want to tell you is that you have the opportunity to support us and to be a support to this cause. We are going to figure out some really cool incentives for people who want to support us. And you can do that financially. You can do that by spreading our videos and all the material we put out. We're here to help us all break down stigma. And one way you can support us is by going to patreon.com/2flewoverthecuckoosnest. We are, the show is listener supported right now.
Right.
And so you can pledge anything from $1 per show up till, $1,000 per show. If that's
I'm
what
totally
you wanna do.
okay with $1,000 per show. Don't let anything hold you back. Another thing too is I'm in the process of getting us set up with a blog and with a Twitter handle so that we can interact more with social media. So you'll be able to read stories throughout the week as well.
Kat, tell them.
Yeah.
Tell them the
Okay.
Twitter handle. Tell them.
We brainstormed about our Twitter handle because, all the names are taken, but this morning, Angel sang. And so our Twitter handle is going to be @nutswithguts.
Wow!
Pretty awesome. If you've seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest or been on our Facebook page, that'll make more sense. So, and likely the blog is going to have the name too, but we'll put that information out as soon as we get everything set up. This is going to be big.
And if you think to yourself, why are those girls stigmatizing themselves by calling themselves nuts? The reason why we are is because it is an actual quote that you will see on our Facebook page by Jack Nicholson,
Right.
who we're going to have him on the show at some point. I'm
Yes.
just putting it out there. He
Manifestation.
He needs to fess up to contributing to mental health stigma.
Right.
We're going to put him on the spot.
Yep.
Anyway, so we want to do that just to bring awareness to what the historical stigmatization has been of mental illness, and so people will see it and they'll be curious, but maybe they're going to be angry. We'll take that too. Bring your anger on, and then we'll show you that we're here doing the work that we can do to try to break down the stigma and just help us all to feel less alone.
Yeah. I mean,
Really?
our big, feeling less alone is important. I would suggest doing a live Facebook cast with a very tiny phone so that you can snuggle up next to another person like we are right now. Because contact and human touching is important.
Thank goodness it's fall. That's all I have to say.
Also, I think with our show, what we're trying to do is improve things going forward, not just for ourselves living with mental illness, but like Chris mentioned earlier, for our family members, for people in our community, for our coworkers. So we're happy that you're here, and
Yes.
we hope to see you again more because we don't plan on leaving
Yeah.
ever. Nope.
So yes, if you've just joined or if you're interested in supporting us, please share the video, share any of the content we share on the Facebook page.
Right.
Go to Twitter and find us at
Nuts with Guts. Yep.
And if you want to support financially, which is, you can pledge anything seriously from $1 up per show. Kat and I are typically going to do the first and third Sundays at 3 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So we're probably going to do 2 shows to start with for a little while.
Yep.
And we have a lot of other things in the works that we're thinking about doing around the Denver area
Yep.
to just bring awareness and bring people together in fighting for, reduced stigma of mental illness. So
Exactly.
go to Patreon, patreon.com/2flewoverthecuckoosnest.
Is that the number 2 or TWO?
TWO.
Okay.
It's always TWO, isn't it?
Yes.
I think that's grammatically correct anyway.
It is. If it's 1 to 10, you write out the word. But after 10, then you can use numerals.
Yay!
See, you're learning things that have nothing to do with mental health as well.
All right, so thank you for joining us. We'll be back in 2 weeks. I don't know if we're going to be live because this is really...
Cozy.
Yeah.
Cozy is the right
We
word.
may do a video.
What?
We're not sure. We may do audio. I don't really know. She just snorted in my ear.
I did. Thank you very
Any
much for
final
joining
words?
us. Just thank you, and I'm excited, and I hope that you learn from us and relate to us and get pissed off at us if you need to, because it's very possible that we're going to learn things from you as well.
Yes.
So thank you.
Open dialogue is key. Thank you for all your support, and please feel free to reach out to us by message on Facebook, 2 Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. If you have topics you're interested in, if you want to see some more content, or if there are people that you think would be great on the show as well. Hi, Laura Ferguson! Hello! We just saw that you said hi!
That's very exciting. So, yes, we should. That's a great idea. Chrissie, go forward with asking your employer to sponsor the show.
That'll be on the agenda next week. Alrighty. Thank you so much for Joining us today. We're excited to be doing this and breaking down all the stigma. We can't wait to see you in 2 weeks and whatever we have in store. So you've been listening to Chrissie Hodges,
Cat Atwell.
and you are watching
Two Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Bye.
Bye.
We don't know how to stop this.